The first time my mother called Grandma confused. Grandma was sitting 6 feet away from her, correcting the interest rate on a loan. We were in my parents' kitchen in Kashmir, Washington, the Saturday before Memorial Day. Dad had spread 3 pages across the table. My younger brother, Nolan, kept tapping a pen against his coffee cup. Mom stood behind Grandma with one hand resting on her shoulder in that soft, careful way people touch you when they want everyone else to notice how patient they're being. Grandma looked at the page and said, "That says 8 1/4, not 7/9. Dad didn't even look down. "Mom," he said, "we've been over this." Then she turned to me. "Leah, why did you stop calling?" I thought I'd misheard her. I'd called 17 times in 11 weeks. I knew the exact number because unanswered calls bothered me, and because tracking what other people forgot was basically both my job and my position in the family. Mom squeezed Grandma's shoulder. "See," she said quietly, "this is what we've been trying to tell you." She gets confused. Grandma's phone was on the counter in a bright yellow case. I picked it up. Her regular voicemail inbox was empty. At the bottom of the screen was a folder labeled Deleted Messages. Inside were 17 voicemails. Every single one was from me. The oldest started with, "Grandma, it's Leah. Mom said you changed your mind about the orchard meeting." The newest was from 2 nights earlier. "I can come Saturday," my own voice said through the kitchen speaker. "Please don't sign anything until we talk." Nobody moved. Then Grandma said very clearly, "I never heard that." Mom reached for the phone. I moved it out of her hand. 40 minutes later, Dad would tell me I was tearing the family apart over a phone glitch. Nolan would admit there was already a buyer for part of Grandma's land. And my mother would finally say the one sentence that told me those messages hadn't disappeared by accident. But even then, I still didn't understand the worst part. The voicemails weren't the first things my parents had deleted between Grandma and me. They were just the first things technology had refused to erase completely. If you've ever had somebody call control care, because care sounds nicer, you probably know why I didn't raise my voice. I just started paying attention to the order of things. That's what I do when a story doesn't add up. I'm 31, and I work in service restoration for an electric utility in Seattle. That sounds more exciting than it is. Most days, I sit in a room with 6 screens and reconstruct why 4 neighborhoods lost power in an order they weren't supposed to. A tree falls. A relay trips. A crew gets sent to the wrong substation. Somebody logs a time incorrectly. My job is to take all the calls, timestamps, work orders, and half-true explanations and build one sequence that actually makes sense. People remember what protects them. Timestamps don't have that problem. In my family, I'd been doing a less official version of the same job since I was about 12. I remembered where Dad left the irrigation keys. I renewed Mom's car tabs when she forgot. I proofread Nolan's college applications, then rewrote the appeal when he lost his scholarship for 1 semester. After Grandpa died, I built a spreadsheet for the orchard because Dad had invoices in 3 drawers, the glove box of his truck, and once, for reasons I never understood, under a bag of frozen peas. Nobody forced me to do all that. I want to be honest about that part. I volunteered. I volunteered because being useful was the cleanest way I knew to belong. Nolan was the one people worried about. I was the one they called when worrying wasn't enough. There's a difference, and it took me a long time to understand it. My parents lived on the 32-acre apple orchard where Dad had grown up. Grandma June lived in the original farmhouse on the eastern edge, across a gravel lane from the newer house my parents built in 2004. She owned her house, the old packing shed, and a little over 6 acres of road frontage. Dad and Mom owned most of the producing orchard around it. On paper, the boundaries were clear. In our family, paper had never been the thing that decided what belonged to whom. Grandma's kitchen was where everyone entered without knocking. Her freezer held pies for Mom's church auction. Her shed stored Dad's tools. Nolan's cider business used the old packing building behind her house. When somebody said the family place, they meant all of it, including whatever Grandma had paid for and whatever I was expected to maintain from 2.5 hours away. Grandma didn't complain about that. For most of my life, she seemed to like being the center pin everybody spun around. She was 82 that spring, 5 feet tall on a generous day, with silver hair she cut herself and a left knee she called a federal crime. She'd kept the orchard books beside Grandpa for 39 years. She could estimate a bin of Honeycrisps within 20 pounds by looking at it. She knew the birthdays of people she claimed not to like. She wore red-handled pruning shears in a leather holster every February, even after Dad started paying a crew to do most of the pruning. When I was 9, she put those shears in my hand for the first time. "Don't cut just because a branch is in your way," she told me. "Know what you're making room for." I cut the wrong branch anyway. Grandma stared at the little stick on the ground and said, "Well, that one's not coming back." That was her whole style of comfort. By the time I was 31, the red handles had faded almost pink. She still kept the shears on a hook by her mudroom door. The last time I'd been inside her house, the hook was empty. That had been in February, before what Mom called the incident. Grandma had gone into the pantry to get a jar of peaches, turned too fast, and fallen against a shelf. She didn't break a hip. She sprained her wrist and bruised the side of her face. But she was alone for almost an hour because her cordless phone was in the living room and her cell phone was charging in the kitchen. That scared all of us. Mom called me at 6:14 that evening. I was still at work. "She can't be alone anymore," she said before she told me Grandma was okay. I drove over that night. By the time I got there, Grandma was home from urgent care, furious about the wrist brace and more embarrassed than injured. Mom had already packed 2 suitcases. "Just for a few nights," she told Grandma. "Until we figure out what's safe." Grandma looked at me. "Is that what you think?" I wish I could say I understood what she was asking. I didn't. I saw the loose rug by the pantry. I saw the phone too far from the floor. I saw a woman who had been alone when she needed help. So I did what I always did. I solved the logistics. I ordered 2 emergency call buttons. I scheduled an occupational therapist to check the house. I made a list of grab bars, brighter hallway lights, and a second handrail for the porch. Then I helped carry Grandma's suitcases across the lane to my parents' guest room. "It's temporary," I told her. She gave me a look I didn't understand until much later. "Temporary gets comfortable fast," she said. For the first week, everything seemed reasonable. Mom cooked. Dad took Grandma to her follow-up appointment. Nolan brought over a ridiculous bouquet from the grocery store with 3 balloons attached. I called every night. Grandma complained about Mom cutting her toast into triangles, like I've joined preschool, which sounded normal enough. Then she stopped answering. At first, Mom said Grandma was napping. Then she said phone calls tired her out. Then she said Grandma had started repeating herself and got upset after talking to me because I asked too many detailed questions. That last part stung because it sounded plausible. I do ask detailed questions. At work, a missing 4-minute interval can be the difference between a bad breaker and a bad procedure. In life, I've learned most people don't enjoy being treated like an outage report. So I backed off. That was my first mistake. I left voicemails instead. Light ones, mostly. I told her about the crow that kept stealing insulation from a job site. I asked whether she still had Grandpa's recipe for mustard pickles. I reminded her that our annual drive to see the wildflowers was coming up in April. I said I loved her. I said there was no pressure to call back. Mom texted me updates. Grandma's having a quiet day. She doesn't remember making wildflower plans. Please don't push her. We're trying to keep things simple for Grandma. That sentence had existed in our family long before the fall. We're trying to keep things simple for Grandma. When Grandpa was sick, it meant don't tell her the full cost of the treatment. When Nolan got arrested for driving drunk at 22, it meant don't let Grandma see the booking photo. When Dad borrowed money from her to replace a tractor, it meant don't bother her with repayment dates. The words sounded gentle. That was their advantage. In practice, simple meant Grandma received whatever version of reality made life easiest for everybody around her. And because I was the dependable one, my job was usually to help keep the story straight. I'd participated in it. That mattered. Years earlier, when Nolan dropped out of Central Washington University for the second time, Mom asked me to tell Grandma he was taking a business opportunity. I did. When Dad used part of Grandma's emergency savings to cover an orchard payroll gap, he repaid it in 6 weeks, but I helped him format a bank transfer description so she wouldn't ask questions. At the time, I told myself we were protecting her from stress. Really, we were protecting ourselves from her opinion. Grandma had opinions the way other people had kitchen utensils. A lot of them, all within reach, and at least one sharper than you expected. The strange thing was that she never seemed fragile when I was alone with her. At Christmas, 2 months before the fall, she had cornered me in the laundry room while everyone else argued about ham. "Your father wants me to sell the road piece," she said. The road piece was what we called the 6 acres along Highway 2. It included Grandma's house, the farm stand, and the driveway to the old packing shed. Sell it to who? I asked. Man from Yakima who thinks every open space needs metal doors on it. Storage units? She rolled her eyes. Climate controlled, apparently. So the junk will be comfortable. I laughed, but she didn't. I said no, she told me. Rick says the farm needs it. Rick was my dad. Grandma used his first name whenever she thought he was being an idiot. I asked how bad things were. Worse than he says. Better than he acts. That was specific enough to worry me. Nolan had opened a cider taproom in the old packing shed 18 months earlier. The place looked beautiful, reclaimed wood, hanging lights, a patio facing the orchard. It also had expensive equipment, limited parking, and the financial appetite of a small nation. Mom called it the future of the farm. Dad called it diversification. Grandma called it a bar with Apple homework. I'd built Nolan's first inventory system for free. Then his booking calendar. Then a cash flow forecast he looked at once and described as kind of negative. When I warned him that his winter projections didn't work, Mom told me not to discourage him. Your brother's finally found something he believes in, she said. I didn't say that math doesn't adjust itself for confidence. By Christmas, the taproom had missed 2 payments to a local equipment lender. Dad's orchard account had covered 1. Grandma knew enough to realize her road frontage was becoming the proposed answer to a problem she hadn't created. Don't let them tell you I agreed, she said in the laundry room. I promised I wouldn't. Then, 3 months later, when Mom told me Grandma couldn't remember our conversation, I let myself believe the easier person. That was my second mistake. The first voicemail I left after the fall asked Grandma whether she still wanted me included in any land discussion. Mom texted 10 minutes later. Please stop bringing up the property. It agitates her. I wrote back, did she hear my message? Mom replied, Leah, trust me for once. Trust, in my family, usually meant surrender your copy of events. Still, I tried. For 11 weeks, I tried. I mailed Grandma a card. Mom said she misplaced it. I sent her a large print mystery novel. Dad said she couldn't focus enough to read. I drove over one Sunday after Mom told me Grandma didn't want visitors, then sat in my car at a gas station outside town for 20 minutes because I couldn't decide whether respecting a boundary meant respecting the person or the person speaking for her. I went home. On April 9th, Mom called and said Grandma had missed a hearing appointment. She wrote down the wrong day, Mom said. Tuesday instead of Thursday. This is what I mean. I called the hearing clinic myself because I'd made the original appointment. The receptionist wouldn't discuss Grandma's care, which was appropriate, but she did confirm the appointment had been moved by phone. Moved from Thursday to Tuesday? I asked. There was a pause. The rescheduled date was Tuesday. Who rescheduled it? I can't release that. I thanked her and hung up. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I decided I was being suspicious because I felt guilty. Mom was the one doing the daily work. Mom was cooking, bathing Grandma's bruised wrist, driving her to appointments, getting up when she needed the bathroom at night. I lived across the mountains and left helpful voicemails. It was easy for me to question the person carrying the load. So when Mom told me, "You don't see what we see," I accepted that. That sentence is powerful in a caregiving family because it can be true. It just wasn't the whole truth in ours. In early May, Dad called me about an orchard insurance renewal. Not Grandma. Not her health. Insurance. He needed an equipment list by Monday, and Nolan hadn't updated it. I spent 6 hours on it that weekend. While we were on the phone, I asked whether Grandma would be moving home soon. Dad sighed. Your mom doesn't think that's realistic. What does Grandma think? That's hard to say. Why? Because she's confused, Leah. It was the first time he said it directly. Not forgetful. Not overwhelmed. Confused. Has she been evaluated? We're handling it. That wasn't my question. His voice changed. Don't turn this into one of your investigations. Your mother is exhausted. Then he asked whether I could also update the vehicle values. I did. Yeah, I know. That was my third mistake, and maybe the clearest one. I was angry enough to ask a question, but still hungry enough for my role that I completed the assignment after they refused to answer it. Being needed felt close enough to being loved that I kept accepting the substitution. The Saturday I found the voicemails, Dad had invited me under the excuse of a family update. I assumed it was about Grandma's care. When I arrived, there was a silver SUV parked beside the cider shed. A man in a pale blue shirt stood near the road taking photographs. I asked Nolan who he was. Nobody, he said too quickly. Inside the kitchen, Grandma sat at the table wearing a cardigan even though it was 74 degrees. Her purse strap was looped twice around the leg of her chair. That bothered me immediately. Grandma had never been possessive about her purse. She used to leave it at the farm stand with the cash box open because she claimed thieves were too lazy to drive that far from the highway. Now, when Mom brought her tea, Grandma put one foot on the strap. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. Grandma looked down. "Things walk off." Mom laughed in a tight little burst. She hid her wallet in the linen closet last week and accused me of taking it. Grandma stared at her tea. Dad pushed the pages toward me. They described a proposed loan restructure for the orchard and Nolan's business. The road acreage wasn't named directly. It appeared as liquidity from non-operating real property. I read that phrase twice. "You're selling Grandma's house?" "No," Dad said. "We're exploring options." With the man taking pictures outside, Nolan stopped tapping his pen. Mom said, "This is exactly why we didn't want to dump all this on June." Grandma lifted her head. "Dump what?" Nobody answered her. I looked at Dad. "Does she know there's a buyer?" "There isn't a buyer." Nolan said, "There's interest." Dad shot him a look. Grandma turned to me then and asked why I'd stopped calling. And that brought us back to the yellow phone on the counter. 17 deleted voicemails. Not 2. Not 1 accidental swipe. 17. I pressed the first one. Then the next. March 6th. "Grandma, it's Leah. I found someone who can install the porch rail next Friday. Call me when you're up for it." March 12th. "Mom said you don't want the occupational therapist coming back. I just want to hear that from you." March 18th. "I'm free Sunday. If you want company, I'll bring those lemon cookies you like." Grandma whispered. I waited that Sunday. Mom reached for the phone again. "That's enough. This is upsetting her." I stood and stepped behind my chair. "Did you delete these?" "Of course not." "Dad." He rubbed one hand over his mouth. "Phones do weird things." 17 times? Maybe she deleted them and forgot. Grandma looked at him. "I don't know how to delete a voicemail." That was true. Grandma's relationship with smartphones was mostly adversarial. She answered calls by pressing the side button and then complained that the phone had hung up on her. Mom had set up the voicemail. Mom also charged the phone every night on the dresser in her own bedroom because, according to her, Grandma kept misplacing the cord. I played another message. April 2nd. "Grandma, Mom says you canceled the wildflower drive. If that's what you want, that's okay. I just wish I could hear your voice." Grandma pressed her lips together. "I wore my yellow sweater all day," she said. That hit harder than any shouting could have. I could picture it. Grandma in the guest room, dressed for a trip nobody had told me was still happening. Mom put both palms on the table. "She changes her mind constantly. You have no idea what it's been like." "Did you delete the messages?" I cleared out things that were making her anxious. There it was. Not yes. Not exactly. But no longer no. "You told me she heard them." "I told you what you needed to know." Grandma flinched like the words had landed physically. Dad stood up. "Everybody needs to calm down." "I'm calm," I said. And I was. That was the strange part. My hands felt cold, but my mind had become very clear. I wasn't looking at one bad decision anymore. I was looking at a sequence. Calls deleted. Visits canceled. Appointment moved. Mail misplaced. Phone kept in another bedroom. Purse looped around a chair. Then property documents placed in front of a woman everyone had been trained to call confused. I opened the share menu on the first voicemail. Mom moved toward me. "What are you doing?" "Making sure they don't disappear twice." I forwarded each recording to myself, one at a time. It took 7 minutes. Nobody spoke during the first 4. By number 5, Dad started pacing. At number 9, Mom told Nolan to take Grandma to the living room. Grandma said she wasn't going anywhere. By number 13, the man in the pale blue shirt had come to the back door, seen us through the glass, and walked away again. At number 17, Mom said, "Are you satisfied?" "No." "What do you want, Leah?" I turned to Grandma. "Do you want to stay here?" Mom answered before she did. "She can't safely live alone." I didn't ask if she should live alone. I asked if she wants to stay here. Grandma looked from me to my parents. She rubbed the edge of her wrist where the brace had been. "I want to go home," she said. Dad exhaled hard. "This is why we didn't want you barging in." "She thinks home is safe because she doesn't remember the fall properly." "I remember the floor," Grandma said. I had plenty of time to study it. Nolan gave a nervous laugh. Nobody joined him. I asked Grandma whether she wanted to come with me for lunch. Just lunch. Somewhere quiet where we could talk without 4 people interpreting her. Mom stepped between us. Absolutely not. That word changed something. My mother had spent 11 weeks framing every restriction as a preference Grandma had expressed. Now Grandma had expressed a preference in front of us, and Mom rejected it before the sentence had settled. You don't get to say absolutely not, I told her. I'm her caregiver. You're not her jailer. Dad slapped one palm against the table. Not hard enough to be frightening. Hard enough to announce that he believed the table was still his. You walk in here after doing nothing for 3 months and accuse your mother of what, exactly? There it was. The revised history had already started. I'd installed the emergency system. I'd arranged the home assessment. I'd paid for the porch materials. I'd called written and offered to come. None of it counted because Mom had controlled whether Grandma received it. She had deleted my effort, then pointed to the empty space as proof I hadn't made any. I could have listed every task. The old version of me would have. She would have presented receipts and dates and hoped a sufficiently accurate defense earned fairness. Instead I said, I'm taking Grandma to lunch if she wants to go. Grandma stood. Mom stared at her. June, you haven't taken your afternoon medication. Then put it in my purse. You need to rest. I've rested since February. I'm practically cured of having a life. Nolan looked down at his coffee. Dad turned toward the window. Mom didn't move. Grandma picked up her purse, unlooped the strap from the chair, and held out her hand. My pills, Elaine. The way she said my mother's name made it clear the conversation was over. We drove to a diner in Wenatchee that served breakfast all day. Grandma ordered a turkey melt, then changed it to eggs, then changed it back to the turkey melt. There, she said after the waitress left. Put that in my medical chart. I laughed before I could stop myself. Then she started crying. Not loudly. She pressed one paper napkin under each eye and apologized to me for getting makeup on them, as if the diner charged by the napkin. I thought you were done with me, she said. I thought you didn't want me there. Your mother said you were too busy. She told me you got anxious after I called. Grandma looked at the table. I did get anxious. I kept wondering why you never said anything back. We spent the next hour comparing versions. Mom told me Grandma had canceled the occupational therapist. Mom told Grandma the therapist couldn't return until June. Mom told me Grandma didn't want the wildflower drive. Mom told Grandma I'd been assigned emergency weekend shifts. Dad told me Grandma's hearing appointment had been missed because she wrote down the wrong day. Grandma said Mom changed the date, wrote it on a sticky note, and placed the note on the refrigerator after they'd already missed it. Maybe she forgot to put it up, Grandma said. Even then, Grandma tried to leave room for an innocent explanation. That's something people don't understand about family betrayal. You don't rush toward the worst interpretation. You drag your feet. You offer excuses nobody asked for. You hold the door open for coincidence until coincidence has walked through carrying your silverware. I asked about the land. Grandma's face changed. Rick says I agreed to sell 2 acres by the highway. Did you? I said I'd listen to an offer. In January. Before I found out what it was for. What is it for? She glanced around the diner, then leaned closer. Nolan owes more than they told you. The equipment loan was only part of it. My parents had guaranteed a second line of credit for renovations. The taproom had fallen behind on payments to 2 suppliers. Dad had used operating money from the orchard to keep it open through winter, and spring spraying costs had hit before the first summer revenue came in. How much? I asked. I don't know. Every time I ask, the number changes. What was on the paper today? I couldn't read half of it. Elaine took my reading glasses because she said the prescription was wrong. I closed my eyes for a second. Where are they? In her desk. Why? She says I get headaches. Do you? Not when I'm wearing my glasses. I asked whether she'd seen a doctor about her memory. She had. Her primary care doctor had done a brief screening 2 weeks after the fall. Grandma said she did poorly on one part because she couldn't hear the words clearly. The doctor recommended a full evaluation after her hearing aids were checked and after she had recovered from the disrupted sleep and pain medication. Mom had translated that into a diagnosis. Did the doctor say you have dementia? No. Did anybody? Your mother says labels aren't important. Labels were apparently important enough for my parents to use one whenever Grandma disagreed with them. I wanted to drive straight back, pack her belongings, replace the locks on her house, call an attorney, call the doctor, call the bank, and possibly call the man in the pale blue shirt just to ruin his afternoon. That urge felt righteous. It was also familiar. Here was a disaster. Here was a list. Here was my chance to become indispensable again. I asked Grandma what she wanted to do next. "I want to hear the messages," she said. So we sat in the parking lot with the air conditioning running and listened to all 17. Hearing them together was worse than seeing the folder. The first 6 were ordinary enough. Offers to visit, updates about the porch, one rambling complaint about my upstairs neighbor learning the trumpet. Then the messages became more careful because Mom's texts had started making me doubt what Grandma could understand. "You don't have to make any decisions today. Mom says you don't remember asking me about the road acreage. If I'm overwhelming you, I'm sorry. I won't come unless you say you want me there." In every message, I had made myself smaller, gentler, easier to reject. Grandma listened with her hands folded over her purse. After number 14, she said, "They made both of us apologize for a conversation we weren't allowed to have." That was one of those sentences that rearranges a room, even when the room is a parked Subaru. The final 3 messages concerned the orchard meeting. In one, I told her I had reviewed a projection Dad emailed me, and that selling her house parcel would cover only part of the debt if the taproom continued losing money. In the next, I asked her to call me before she signed anything. In the last, I said I was coming Saturday whether Mom thought it was helpful or not. "That's why they finally invited you," Grandma said. She was right. My parents hadn't invited me because they wanted my opinion. They invited me because Dad needed my work on the loan plan, and because after my last voicemail, it had become easier to control me in the room than outside it. Grandma spent that night at my apartment in Seattle. It wasn't a brilliant arrangement. I lived on the 2nd floor of a converted house with 12 steep steps and a bathtub designed by somebody who hated knees. I borrowed a shower chair from my neighbor and slept on the couch so Grandma could have my bed. At 2 in the morning, I heard the bedroom door open. Grandma came out fully dressed, her purse over her shoulder. "Are you okay?" I asked. I didn't know where the bathroom was. It was 10 feet from the bedroom. My stomach dropped. Then she looked at my face and said, "Leah, it's dark, I don't have my glasses, and your hallway has 3 identical doors. Stop diagnosing me." She was right. I showed her the bathroom. When she went back to bed, she placed her shoes beside the mattress with the toes pointing toward the door. The next morning, I asked why. "Your mother used to move them," she said. "Why?" "She said I left them where she could trip. Then I couldn't find them when I wanted to go outside." "Did you ask her to stop?" "Every time. Small control rarely announces itself as control. It arrives as a favor. Your shoes are moved so nobody trips. Your glasses are stored so you don't get a headache. Your phone is charged in another room so you don't lose the cord. Your visitors are canceled so you can rest. Each decision can defend itself alone. Put them in order, and a door appears around you." Mom called 16 times before breakfast. I didn't answer. Grandma asked me not to. Dad left 2 messages. The first said they were worried. The second said I had removed a vulnerable adult from her caregiver and needed to think very carefully about how this looked. Nolan texted, "What the hell are you doing?" I wrote back, asking Grandma what she wants. He replied, "She doesn't know what she wants." Grandma read the message over my shoulder. "Apparently I raised a son, a granddaughter, and an expert panel," she said. I made coffee while she called her doctor's office herself. She put the phone on speaker because of her hearing. The receptionist spoke to Grandma, not me. That detail mattered. She asked permission before discussing anything in front of me. Grandma requested a full evaluation and asked whether her daughter-in-law had access to her medical information. There was a pause while the receptionist checked. "Elaine Mercer is listed as someone we may speak with about scheduling," she said. "She's not authorized to make decisions for you." Grandma looked at me. My parents had authority because everyone behaved as if they did. Not because anyone had actually established it. The earliest evaluation appointment was 3 weeks away. The office also gave Grandma the number for a local aging services coordinator who could help us make a temporary plan. I called before Grandma had finished writing it down. Then I called an accessibility contractor, a locksmith, the hearing clinic, a home care agency, Dad's insurance broker, and a friend from work whose wife practiced elder law. By 11, I had 23 items in a spreadsheet. Grandma looked over my shoulder. "What's that?" "A plan." "For whose life?" "Yours." Then why are you the only one typing? I turned in my chair. She wasn't angry. That made it worse. I'm trying to help. So was Elaine, according to Elaine. That shut me up. Grandma reached for the laptop and pulled it toward her. I'm not trading your mother making every decision for you making better colored decisions. My spreadsheet did have color coding. That was beside the point. I had spent less than 24 hours outside my old role before rebuilding it around a new emergency. The family system didn't only live in my parents. Part of it lived in me. Give me fear, and I turned it into a task list. Give me love, and I turned that into labor too. I deleted 14 items. Together, we decided on 3. First, Grandma would stay for 1 week at an independent senior apartment that offered short-term guest rooms. It had an elevator, grab bars, and staff on site, but nobody controlled her phone or schedule. Second, she would complete the cognitive and hearing evaluations before deciding where to live permanently. Third, nobody would discuss the orchard or her property with her unless she had her glasses, hearing aids, and a person of her choice present. Grandma chose me as that person. I said yes, but for once I made her explain what yes meant. It meant I would sit beside her, not in front of her. Mom came to my apartment that afternoon. She didn't knock. She held the buzzer down until my neighbor opened the outer door, then climbed the stairs and walked in when I answered. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair, usually sprayed into place, was pulled into a loose knot. She looked genuinely exhausted. "Where is she?" she asked. "With the coordinator." "You left her with a stranger?" "She's touring a place she chose." Mom sat on my couch without being invited. "You have no idea what you've done. I know you deleted my messages. I managed her phone. You lied to both of us. I filtered things that upset her. You mean things that gave her information." Mom's face tightened. "Do you know what it's like to have somebody ask the same question 6 times in one morning?" "No." "Do you know what it's like to sleep with one ear open because she might fall?" "No." "Do you know what it's like when she calls you selfish after you've cooked every meal, washed her clothes, and put your entire life on hold?" "No." "I don't." The fight went out of her for half a second. I sat across from her. "You were doing real work, Mom. You were also controlling her. Both can be true." She stared at me like I'd used a language she didn't respect. "You always do this," she said. "You come in with your lists and make everybody else look incompetent." I didn't delete the messages. Because you weren't here to see what happened after she heard them. She didn't hear them. Some of them she did. "Which ones?" Mom looked away. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me. The ones about the property." She got worked up. "She accused your father of stealing from her. She tried to walk home after dark. So yes, I deleted the rest. I needed 1 calm week. 1. Then there was always another message from you asking another question. There was the humanity in it, and there was the harm. Mom had been overwhelmed. Grandma could be stubborn. A frightened 82-year-old trying to cross a dark gravel lane after an argument was a legitimate safety concern. But Mom had responded by removing the questions instead of answering them. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because you would have done exactly this." Listen to her? Made her think she can go home and everything will magically be fine. I didn't tell her that. "You don't have to. You're her favorite." That surprised me. I'm not anybody's favorite in this family. Mom laughed once, without humor. "You really believe that, don't you?" Then she said something I had never heard before. "Your grandmother wanted you to run the orchard." I just stared at her. "When?" "After college. After your grandfather's first stroke. She wanted you back here handling operations with your dad." Nobody asked me. "We did ask." "No, you didn't." "I told her you wanted your own career. I told you she didn't think farm life suited you." My memory snapped backward 6 years. I was 25, working contract jobs, and living with 2 roommates in Tacoma. I'd told Mom I was thinking about coming home. She said Grandma had laughed at the idea and told her I was too soft for crop work now. For years, that sentence had sat inside me like a nail. "Why would you do that?" I asked. Mom's answer came quickly, like she'd rehearsed it in a room where I wasn't present. "Because you would have hated it. Your father would have felt replaced. Nolan needed a reason to stay. And June always gets grand ideas without thinking about the mess everyone else has to live with." She said it as if she had solved 4 problems. Maybe in her mind she had. "Did Grandma know you told me she didn't want me?" "It was 6 years ago." That's not an answer. I kept the family functioning. There it was again. The family's real rule. Not keep things simple for Grandma. Keep every person in the role Elaine had selected for them. Dad remained the unquestioned farmer. Nolan remained the son whose confidence needed protection. Grandma remained the sentimental owner whose money counted more than her decisions. Mom remained the person who translated everyone to everyone else. And I remained useful at a distance, close enough to rescue the system, never close enough to challenge who controlled it. You didn't keep us functioning, I said. You kept us separated. Mom stood. That's a dramatic way to describe a mother making hard choices. You made my choices too. At the door, she turned back. When June turns on you, and she will, don't call me to fix it. It was meant as a threat. The fact that she thought I might finally need something made it sound almost like freedom. Grandma moved into the guest apartment that evening. She called Mom herself and gave her the address. Mom didn't answer, so Grandma left a voicemail. We both looked at the phone after she hung up. Think she'll delete it? Grandma asked. Wrong phone. Grandma smiled. That must be killing her. The next day, we went back to her house for clothes, glasses, and the red-handled pruning shears. Her key didn't work. Dad had changed the lock after the fall and never given her a new one. He answered when Grandma called. He said he was at the south block checking irrigation and would meet us in 20 minutes. We waited 45. Grandma sat on the porch in the chair Grandpa had built. She didn't speak. Every few minutes, she looked at her old key in her palm and rubbed her thumb along the worn teeth. When Dad finally arrived, he looked at her, then at me. I wish you hadn't brought her into this. Grandma held up the key. It's my house, Rick. You brought me into it when you locked me out. Dad's shoulders dropped. For 1 second, he looked less like an antagonist and more like a 62-year-old man who had run out of space between his debts, his wife, his son, and his mother. Then he said, We changed it for your safety. Grandma looked at me. They do love that word. Inside, the house looked wrong. Half the family photographs had been removed from the living room. The dining table was bare. A neutral quilt covered Grandma's bright floral couch. There were small white stickers on the baseboards and windows. I had seen stickers like that during property assessments. Has someone measured the house? I asked. Dad didn't answer. Grandma walked to her bedroom. Her closet had been sorted into plastic tubs labeled Keep, Donate, and Facility. She touched the last label. What facility? Dad stood in the doorway. Your mother, Elaine, was looking at options. For me or for the house? Mom, come on. No. You come on. She opened the top drawer of her dresser. Empty. My papers were here. Elaine moved them to our safe. My glasses. At our house. My pruning shears? Dad frowned. What? The red ones. I don't know. They were on the mudroom hook. Mom, those things are sharp. Grandma looked at him for a long time. So am I, she said. Dad found the glasses in Mom's desk. The shears were in a locked cabinet in the garage with lawn chemicals and chainsaw oil. Grandma held them by the red handles and worked the blades open with her thumb. They were stiff from disuse. Needs cleaning, she said. We can do that later, I told her. She put them into her purse. No, she said. I can. The evaluation happened 3 weeks later. Mom asked to attend. Grandma said no. Dad asked whether I had coached her to say that. Grandma told him if I'd coached her, she would have used fewer swear words. The appointment lasted most of a morning. The clinician spoke slowly enough for Grandma to hear, but never treated her like a child. She asked about medications, sleep, mood, money, the orchard, the fall, and current events. She tested memory and reasoning. She also sent Grandma back to the hearing clinic, where we learned the left hearing aid had a damaged microphone. Grandma did not get a perfect report. She had mild age-related memory changes. She needed reminders for some appointments. She mixed up the name of the governor with the name of a television weatherman, which she found insulting to both men. The clinician recommended follow-up testing in a year and help with medication organization. But Grandma understood her property, her finances, her choices, and the consequences of those choices. She could decide where she lived and who had access to her information. She was not diagnosed with dementia. She was not incapable. She was 82, grieving, sleeping badly in somebody else's house, and listening through a broken hearing aid while people rearranged her life. Context doesn't cure every problem. It does change what a problem means. When Dad read the summary, he focused on the words mild memory changes. When Mom read it, she said the clinician had seen Grandma on a good day. Nolan didn't read it at all. He called me and said, Even if she's technically competent, you know she's not making rational choices. Which choice? Refusing the sale. A decision isn't irrational because it costs you money. He got quiet. Then he told me the number. The taproom owed just over $216,000 across the equipment note, the renovation line, suppliers, and money Dad had moved from the orchard operation. Does Grandma know? I asked. Dad explained it. With her glasses locked in Mom's desk? Come on, Leah. Did she know the road sale was paying your debt? It's not my debt. It's all connected. That sentence explained Nolan's entire life. When he succeeded, the achievement was his. When he failed, the cost became communal. I asked what he had personally put into the taproom. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. He accused me of being jealous. Then he said I'd always hated that he stayed close to the family while I ran off to Seattle. I nearly defended myself. I nearly told him about the orchard job I had never received, the invitation Mom intercepted, the years I'd spent thinking Grandma didn't believe I could handle the work. Then I realized he didn't know. Did Mom ever tell you Grandma asked me to come back? Silence. What are you talking about? I told him. He didn't believe me at first. Then he became angry in a different direction. She said you turned it down. Of course she had. Mom had given each of us a story that kept us from comparing what we'd been promised. Nolan believed I had rejected the family and then judged him from a safe distance. I believed he had been handed the place I wasn't good enough to earn. Neither version threatened the arrangement. Ask Grandma, I said. She's confused. The words came automatically. Then Nolan heard himself. He hung up without saying goodbye. Grandma hired an independent bookkeeper named Priya Shah to review the orchard payments connected to her property. I attended the first meeting and kept my mouth shut for almost 7 full minutes, a personal record. The review didn't reveal a cinematic fortune hidden in the Cayman Islands. It revealed something more believable and, in a way, more painful. For years, the orchard had paid Grandma $2,400 a month for use of the packing shed, the farm stand lot, and access across her lane. The payment wasn't charity. It was part of the arrangement Grandpa made when ownership was divided. 8 months earlier, those payments had stopped. Dad had told Grandma the money was being deposited into a different account. Mom had told her the same amount was being applied to household and caregiving expenses. In reality, it had remained in the orchard operation and then helped cover the taproom. $19,200. Not enough to make Grandma rich. Enough to make her question whether she had paid the same bill twice. That was one of the examples Mom had used to prove she was confused. Grandma had not forgotten where the money went. She had been given 2 false answers. Priya also found that Grandma had written 3 checks to the orchard the previous year, totaling $30,000. Those were legitimate. She remembered them and had agreed to them. That distinction mattered to her. Don't turn every dollar I gave them into theft, she told me. I helped because I wanted to. They only stole the part where I got to stop. That line stayed with me. People flattened the story after it came out. Some relatives called my parents criminals. Others called me greedy. Both groups wanted an easy villain and an easy victim. Grandma refused both roles. She loved my father. She loved Mom, even while she was furious with her. She wanted Nolan's business to survive if it could survive honestly. She also wanted her lease payments restored and the road property taken off the market. Those things could exist together. Mom made that difficult. She sent a group message to 19 relatives saying I had exploited Grandma's temporary clarity to seize control of her money. She said I had isolated Grandma from her primary caregivers. She mentioned the fall 7 times and the deleted messages 0 times. An aunt from Idaho called me at work to say I should be ashamed. My first instinct was to send everyone the recordings, the medical summary, and a 12-point timeline. I drafted the email. Grandma asked me not to send it. But they're lying, I said. They lied before the email, and some of them will lie after it. You don't care what they think. Of course I care. I'm old, not enlightened. She took my laptop and closed it. You don't have to correct every person who prefers the wrong story. That was hard for me. Harder than changing locks or calling offices or finding $19,000 in the wrong column. My whole life, accuracy had been the way I tried to make myself safe. But accuracy can become another performance when you're begging people to judge you fairly. I saved the draft and never sent it. 2 weeks later, Dad asked me to meet him and Mom at a coffee shop in Bellevue. Neutral territory, he called it, although Mom chose a table facing the door and arrived with a printed proposal. The first page offered me a job. Operations director for Mercer Orchard. A real salary. Health insurance. A 10% ownership interest that would increase after 5 years. Authority over budgets, vendors, and production schedules. It was almost exactly the role I'd wanted at 25. For a few seconds, I couldn't hear the coffee grinder behind me. Mom watched my face and knew. "We should have brought you in years ago," she said. "I can admit that." Dad nodded. "Nolan's creative. You're operational. We need both." There it was. The seat at the table I had spent half my life pretending I didn't want. Page 2 explained the conditions. Grandma would approve the 2-acre sale, which would leave her house intact, but place the new storage development between the house and highway. I would stop using outside financial reviewers after the missing lease payments were restored. I would provide a written statement calling the voicemail deletions, a caregiving misunderstanding during a stressful transition. Mom would resume coordinating Grandma's appointments with appropriate oversight, and the family would move forward. That phrase appeared 3 times. Move forward meant stop asking who had pushed us backward. "If I say no?" I asked. Dad looked tired. "Then the farm may not survive in its current form." "And if I say yes?" Mom leaned toward me. "Then you finally come home." I wish I could tell you I laughed in their faces. I didn't. I took the proposal with me. For 3 days, I imagined the office in the packing shed. I imagined walking the rows before sunrise with a radio on my belt. I imagined building the systems Dad had always resisted, training crews, planning harvest, proving that Grandma had been right about me. I also imagined Sunday dinners where Mom looked relieved when I arrived. Dad asking my opinion before he'd already made the decision. Nolan treating me as a partner instead of emergency staff. Conditional love works because the love is real enough to want. The condition was that I helped turn Grandma's no into a yes and call the method a misunderstanding. I almost did it. I told myself I could accept the job, stabilize the farm, protect Grandma from inside, and change the culture later. That is how capable people talk themselves back into bad systems. We believe our usefulness will eventually give us the power our boundaries could have given us immediately. Grandma found the proposal on my kitchen table. She read every page with her repaired hearing aids in and her glasses on, even though hearing had nothing to do with reading. She'd become very committed to having all available equipment. "Good salary," she said. "It is. You want it." I couldn't lie to her. "Yes." She placed the pages back in order. "Then decide whether it's a job or hush money. I could help you if I were there. You are helping me. I could keep them from doing this again. By agreeing that they didn't do it?" I looked away. Grandma touched the red handles of the shears lying on my counter. She had cleaned the blades herself with oil and an old toothbrush. "I wanted you at that orchard because you were good," she said. "Not because you were obedient." That was the thing I had wanted to hear for 6 years. And once I heard it, I realized I didn't need to spend the next 6 proving it. The following Monday, my parents held a meeting in the old packing shed with the lender, their bookkeeper, the land broker, Nolan, and Grandma. Dad believed the purpose was to finalize a workable plan. Grandma believed the purpose was to answer one question in front of everyone who had been given an answer for her. She asked me to come. She also brought Priya and a local attorney she had chosen herself. Not to make a speech for her. To make sure nobody translated one afterward. The taproom was closed on Mondays. We sat beneath the hanging lights Nolan had installed, at 2 long tables pushed together. Through the open roll-up door, I could see the orchard rows and the roof of Grandma's house. Dad presented first. He explained the debt, the sale, the loan restructure, and the family's shared commitment to preserving the orchard. Mom presented the caregiving plan. She said Grandma would remain in supported housing until her confusion stabilized. Grandma raised one finger. "My what?" Mom stopped. The lender looked down at his papers. Grandma placed the medical summary on the table, but she didn't push it toward anybody. "I forget things," she said. "Last week I put my library book in the freezer. I still don't know why. That does not mean you get my house." Nobody gasped. Nobody applauded. The land broker removed his glasses and cleaned them with his shirt. Dad said, "No one is taking your house. Then the road property is not for sale." The broker looked at Dad. "Mrs. Mercer, my understanding was that you approved moving forward. Your understanding came from people who deleted 17 messages before I could hear them." Mom's face went red. "June, that had nothing to do with the sale." Grandma looked at her. One message said not to sign the sale. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. The lender asked whether Grandma had signed any sale authorization. She had not. The broker confirmed that everything so far had been preliminary and contingent on her approval. Dad read the same paragraph on his page twice. Nolan stared at the concrete floor. Grandma continued. She would not sell the 2 acres. She would give the orchard 12 months to repay the missing lease payments under a schedule Priya would monitor. She would allow Nolan's taproom 90 days in the packing shed without additional rent, after which it would either pay a market lease or move. She wasn't trying to destroy the business. She was making it stand without leaning on her. Then she said Mom would no longer have access to her phone, mail, bank information, or medical scheduling. Mom's hands were flat on the table. After everything I did for you, she asked. Grandma's expression softened. You did a great deal for me, Elaine. And then you decided that bought you me. Mom began to cry. Not performatively. Not neatly. Dad reached for her hand, and she pulled away. I was exhausted, she said. Nobody helped me. I felt the old accusation reach for me. Grandma answered first. Leah tried. You deleted the trying. That was the quietest sentence in the room, and the one nobody could move around. Dad looked at me. What about the operations proposal? I took the pages from my bag and placed them on the table. For a second, I saw my entire imagined life inside them. Then I slid them back. You offered me a title because you needed my silence. I'm not confusing that with respect anymore. Dad nodded once. He didn't argue. Mom looked at the proposal but wouldn't look at me. Nolan finally spoke. If Grandma doesn't sell, I'm done. Grandma turned toward him. No. If you can't pay for your business, the business is done. You are not. He pressed both hands against his eyes. That was the first time anyone in our family had separated Nolan from the consequences of his project without separating him from love. The meeting ended without a dramatic explosion. The broker packed his laptop. The lender requested revised numbers. Priya scheduled another review. Dad stood by the open door for a long time, looking at the orchard as if it had changed shape. In a way, it had. The land was the same. The ownership was the same. The only thing missing was everybody's assumption that Grandma's no could be edited into agreement. The next year wasn't clean. Nolan closed the taproom after 4 months. He sold the equipment, paid down part of the debt, and took a production job at a larger cidery near Yakima. For a while, he blamed me. Then he blamed Dad. Eventually, he admitted he'd built a business on numbers he avoided reading because somebody had always covered the negative ones. He apologized to Grandma first. His apology to me came 6 months later in the form of a voicemail. I thought you didn't want the orchard, he said. I think I needed to believe that. I'm sorry I never asked you. I saved that message. Not because everything was repaired, but because he had finally said something without Mom carrying it between us. Dad scaled back the orchard and leased 8 acres to a neighboring grower. He repaid Grandma's missing income over 10 months. He and I speak every few weeks. Sometimes he apologizes in pieces. Sometimes he still says the whole situation got blown out of proportion. When he does, I end the call. Mom and Grandma went 4 months without seeing each other. Then Mom asked to visit with the aging services coordinator present. Grandma agreed. Mom apologized for deleting the voicemails, but she still said she had done it because she was overwhelmed. Grandma told her an explanation could sit beside an apology, but it couldn't replace one. They now have lunch twice a month. Mom does not manage the reservation, the ride, the phone, or the menu. Grandma moved back into her house after the grab bars, stair rail, brighter lights, and emergency buttons were installed. She has help 3 mornings a week. Priya handles the property accounts. A retired teacher drives her to appointments when I can't. The first month, I tried to attend everything. Grandma fired me from Tuesday errands. Go have your own life, she said. I fought too hard for mine to become your full-time job. So I did something that felt irresponsible at first. I let other people help. I kept my job in Seattle. I took a vacation without building a backup spreadsheet for Dad. I stopped answering family calls that began with, "It'll only take you 5 minutes." Most of those 5-minute emergencies solved themselves once I wasn't available to absorb them. Last February, almost a year after the fall, Grandma and I pruned the young apple tree beside her porch. She wore the red-handled shears in their old leather holster. Her hands weren't as strong as they used to be, so I held one branch while she made the first cut. Then she handed the shears to me. I pointed to a branch growing inward across the center. That one? I asked. Grandma studied it. What are you making room for? I looked through the branches toward the open part of the sky. Light, I said. She nodded. So I cut it. The branch fell into the grass, and neither of us tried to put it back. If any part of this felt familiar, tell me where care ended and control began in your family. Sometimes the first honest record is the story nobody was allowed to hear.